Welcome to Kate Stories. You are listening to a retelling of Beauty and the Beast, a werewolf shapeshifter. Prologue. Before the bloom. She was an ordinary woman, albeit whimsical at times, drawn to things others overlooked. The crooked branch, the silent space between notes, the forgotten trail behind a locked gate. Belle Nolan lived in the quiet margins of the city, where ivy cracked the sidewalk and wind whispered secrets between library stacks. She wasn't reckless, not exactly, but she was curious in the way people usually outgrow. And that, perhaps, was her most dangerous trait. She believed that truth could be found in the soil, in roots, in the rhythms of things that grow and wither and grow again. No one would have guessed that the path she took one bright, chilly evening, field notebook in hand, camera slung over one shoulder, would lead to the unraveling of a life untouched by magic or myth. But the world is full of strange doors. Some creak, some shine, and some bloom. This is the story of a woman who reached for a glowing flower and pulled something ancient from the dark. Not a prince. Not a fairy tale, but a man shaped by curse and claw and memory. This is a story about staying when others run, about the wild inside us, and the love that calls it home.
I didn't think it was. It looked abandoned.
You just took the one thing keeping me human.
And so, under a fading sun and a sky not quite night, her story begins. The night was colder than expected. The kind of chill that slid down the back of your neck even when you were zipped up tight. Belle Nolan hadn't planned to be in the East Side Botanical Gardens after hours, especially not alone. But she was chasing a lead. She worked as a lab assistant at Hartsfield University, mostly cataloging rare plants and their genetic mutations. Her boss, Dr. Karen Lewinsky, had dismissed the glowing flora rumor as urban nonsense. But Belle's gut said otherwise. She'd seen it briefly like a flicker while jogging last week. It pulsed under the shade of a tree like a faint breathing light. No plant in her textbooks ever behaved like that. So she came back, clipped the chain at the south gate, slipped in with her field kit and flashlight. The glowing plant wasn't hard to find. The flower had silver blue petals that curled at the tips, and as she bent close, she felt a weird static in the air, like the electricity before a storm. It was beautiful, delicate, impossible. She reached for it gently, used tweezers to snip the stem, and sealed it in a sample bag. The glow didn't fade. Then the footsteps came, soft at first, then clearer. Belle turned, startled, and saw him. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, stood about 20 feet away, half shrouded in shadow under the pergola. His hoodie was up, but even from the distance, she could tell something was wrong. His posture was stiff, like he was barely holding himself upright. His breath misted the air heavily, more than normal.
I didn't think it was... it looked abandoned,
she said, holding up the bag like that would explain everything. His voice was like crushed gravel layered over regret.
You just took the one thing keeping me human.
Belle took a step back. He stepped forward. In that moment, logic wanted to take over. She wanted to believe he was just some weirdo speaking metaphorically. Maybe the plant had sentimental value. Maybe he was high. But then he moved closer. The security light hit his face, and Belle froze. His eyes glowed. Not reflected, glowed. Like gold embers, alive inside his skull. His skin was flushed, but not with warmth. There were faint lines, cracks, along his cheeks, almost like his bones were shifting beneath.
What are you talking about?
She whispered, suddenly aware of how thin her voice sounded.
That plant. It suppresses the shift.
he said.
It connects me to what's left of my body, my mind, my control. And you just ripped it out of the ground.
Belle's grip on the sample bag tightened. She looked down. The glow inside was fading, not fast, but fading. She took a slow step backward.
Okay, look, I'll put it back. I didn't damage the root.
You think this is about gardening?
His voice sharpened, not loud, not violent, just full of pressure, like he was holding something back with every word. Belle held up her hands.
You're freaking me out.
I'm freaking myself out.
He muttered, almost to himself. He turned away from her then, pressed a palm to the stone wall of the garden archway, and exhaled a long breath. His shoulders rose and fell like he was wrestling invisible chains. Belle should have run. Every instinct said, "Get out." But she stayed. Maybe it was morbid curiosity. Maybe it was the same stubborn streak that had her breaking into gardens and questioning experts.
Tell me what's happening to you,
She said. He looked back over his shoulder.
You really want to know?
I think I already do. I just don't believe it yet.
He nodded slowly.
Then I need you to come with me. Now.
Chapter 2. Into the Pines. The way he said "come with me" wasn't a threat. It was a warning. A final thread of civility, holding something darker in place. Belle hesitated.
I don't know your name.
He blinked slowly, like the question surprised him.
Kade.
He said, voice low.
And we don't have time.
She looked around at the dark garden, the empty city skyline beyond it, the sample bag still clutched in her fist. Her heart was thundering. This was the part of the story where someone made a bad decision and disappeared. But this didn't feel like fiction. Kade wasn't just strange. He was breaking. Not emotionally, physically. His control, his posture, even the heat coming off him. It all felt like pressure against a glass wall. Belle slipped the sample bag into her satchel and nodded.
Okay, but you're not driving.
Kade exhaled once through his nose, a half smile flickering like it didn't belong on his face anymore.
Wasn't gonna argue.
They took her hatchback. Belle drove with one hand on the wheel and one eye on him. Kade sat rigid in the passenger seat, hood off now, revealing short, ash-brown hair that clung damp to his forehead. His skin looked tight over his cheekbones, and every few minutes, he rubbed his fingers hard across his forearms like he was trying to stay inside them.
Where are we going?
She asked.
North, into the hills. There's a place. Used to be a firewatch post back in the 70s. Nobody goes near it now.
How long do we have?
Kade looked at her, not harsh, but measured.
2 hours, maybe less.
Belle nodded. She didn't ask more. She didn't need to. The city lights vanished behind them in a matter of minutes. Soon they were winding through pine-lined roads, mist curling over the asphalt like ghost breath. Belle kept the radio off. Kade's silence was louder than any music anyway. Finally, after 37 minutes of unbroken trees and cold air, he said,
You should be scared of me.
Belle didn't look over.
I'm more scared of letting someone lose themselves and doing nothing.
Kade stared out the window for a long moment.
I used to say that too.
They pulled onto a gravel road barely visible in the dark. Her headlights cut across old wooden posts and a rusted gate hanging open. Belle followed the path until they reached the base of a short ridge. A small A-frame cabin squatted there, half covered in moss and shadow. The kind of place no GPS would find. No ranger would visit. Kade got out first. Belle followed, her boots crunching on gravel. As they approached the door, he stumbled. Just a step, but enough. Belle caught his arm. His skin was hot, burning. He looked at her sharply, breathing hard.
"Don't touch me again,"
he said, but his voice was more desperate than angry. Belle let go. Inside, the cabin was bare bones. A wood stove in the corner, a collapsed cot, shelves of dust, and nothing else. No electricity, no running water. Just 4 walls and a roof.
"This'll hold me,"
Kade muttered, sinking onto the floor. Belle set her bag down, pulled out the sample bag with the flower. It had stopped glowing. She held it up.
Can this still help?
Kade took one look and shook his head.
"Too late. Whatever it was doing, it stopped when you took it."
Belle's stomach dropped.
Is there anything else I can do?
She asked. He didn't answer right away. Then quietly,
"Stay, so I don't lose who I am completely."
she did. As the night stretched on, Belle sat near the door with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Kade lay curled on the floor, shivering, sweating. He scratched his arms raw, bit the inside of his cheek until blood pooled. Once, near midnight, he let out a sound, not a scream, not a growl. Something between, something human cracking. She didn't move, just watched, witnessed, stayed. The moon crested through the trees like a slow-dragged blade. At 3:17 a.m., he lunged, not at her, but the wall. His body slammed into it, shoulder first. He sank to his knees, breath ragged. His eyes, golden and glowing, locked on hers. But he didn't speak. He didn't need to. He was still fighting. Chapter 3. What Remains at Sunrise. The first pale light of morning filtered through the cabin's cracked window panes. It wasn't warm, not really, but it was enough to soften the sharp edges of the long night. Belle stirred from her makeshift seat near the door. Her back ached. Her eyes burned from lack of sleep. But her first thought was him. Kade hadn't moved in almost an hour. He lay on the floor, face turned away, chest rising and falling with slow, uneven breaths. The storm had passed. At least for now. Belle crept forward, careful not to startle him. A sheen of sweat glistened on his skin. The claw marks he'd torn into his own arms were already beginning to heal, fast, unnaturally fast. She crouched beside him.
Kade?
She whispered. No response. She reached out, then stopped herself. He'd asked her not to touch him. Even now she respected that. Instead, she sat beside him and waited. It took another hour for him to stir. His eyes opened slowly, not glowing now, just human, tired, guarded. He didn't speak, just blinked at the ceiling like it was the first time he'd seen it.
"I'm still me,"
he finally rasped. Belle nodded.
You didn't lose yourself.
He turned his head toward her.
"You stayed."
I said I would.
He swallowed hard.
"You don't know what that means to me."
Belle offered a faint smile.
Then explain it.
Kade pushed himself up slowly, every movement strained. He sat with his back to the wall, head resting against the wood.
"The first time I changed, I was 17. No warning, no full moon nonsense. Just rage, heat. I blacked out and woke up in the woods, naked, covered in blood. Not mine. I still don't know who it belonged to."
He paused. After that, I locked myself away. Found the flowers by accident. A guy in Eastern Europe, older like me, taught me they could bind the animal back. Only certain ones. Only the ones that connect with your body. Bloodbound. Genetic mirrors. Belle listened, silent, absorbing every word.
"I don't want to be a monster,
He said quietly.
but I don't know if I'm anything else anymore."
Belle looked at the flower in the bag. It had withered to gray, dead,
But last night, you didn't hurt anyone.
she said. Kade shook his head.
I hurt myself, and I almost went through the wall. Another hour, maybe less, and I wouldn't have stopped.
But you did.
He met her eyes.
Because you were here.
The words hung heavy between them. Belle looked away.
You said there were others, more flowers?
He nodded.
Maybe. But they're rare. Hidden. One was growing in a corner of the city and no one noticed it until you.
A beat passed,
Then we find another one.
she said. He blinked. What?
I'll help you. Track them, study them, figure out what makes them work. You've spent years surviving. Maybe it's time you started living.
Kade stared at her, expression unreadable.
You'd do that?
He said,
Even after last night?
You're not the monster.
she said.
You're the one fighting it.
He laughed, dry and tired.
Belle, you don't even know me.
She stood. Then let's fix that. She walked to the kitchen and began boiling water on the old propane burner. The place smelled like dust and pine. Behind her, she heard Kade whisper to himself. She stayed, and in that whisper, something shifted. Not the curse, not the danger, but him. Chapter 4. Traces of the Bloom. Belle's apartment was a shoebox stacked between louder lives. A second-floor unit above a used bookstore with squeaky floorboards, cracked paint, and a dozen different types of tea lining the kitchen shelves. She hadn't planned on bringing Kade there, not ever. But after what happened in the cabin, it felt like hiding him in plain sight might be safer than leaving him in the woods to rot under his own fears. She helped him through the door just before dawn the next day. His strength was coming back fast, too fast. 1 second he could barely stand. The next, his grip on the stair rail bent metal. He noticed too.
Sorry.
He muttered, staring at the warped iron. Belle didn't flinch.
Add it to the charm.
Inside, she guided him to the couch. It sagged but held,
I don't usually bring home shapeshifters.
she said. He smirked faintly.
And here I thought I was special.
Belle poured tea. The silence between them wasn't awkward anymore, just heavy, not with fear, but with weight, like something real was settling. He sipped his tea, watching her over the rim.
You still trust me?
He said. She met his eyes.
I never stopped.
Belle spent the next few hours combing through her field notes, searching for patterns in the strange flora, where they grew, what they responded to, any irregularities in their light cycles. She referenced old photos, botanical maps, even snippets from old myths. Most of it was garbage, but she noticed something. The flower she picked, the one that had triggered everything, only glowed under a full moon and only near iron-rich soil. 2 other locations fit that exact profile. One was an abandoned mining trail upstate. The other was a decommissioned rail yard downtown, overtaken by vines and forgotten fences. She turned to Kade.
How do you feel about trains?
He arched a brow.
I prefer not to wake up on the tracks.
Good. Then we better check it before sundown.
The rail yard was fenced in, but barely. Vines had twisted around the chain link and pulled it apart like old lace. Belle climbed through first. Kade followed, careful, alert. His senses were sharper now. Every sound, every gust of wind, he tracked it. They moved carefully through the crumbling lot, sidestepping broken glass and rusted rails. Belle stopped near a cracked storage container. The soil here was deep reddish-brown, iron-rich. Kade crouched beside her.
I smell it.
Belle looked at him.
The bloom?
He nodded.
Not as strong as the first one, But it's here.
She scanned the underbrush, nothing glowing yet. The sun hadn't set. They waited. At exactly 7:03 p.m., as twilight thickened, a faint shimmer pulsed beneath a rotting plank. Kade moved slowly, carefully, like approaching a wounded animal. Belle crouched beside him, watching. There it was, another silver-blue bloom, smaller than the first, faint, fragile, but real. Kade reached toward it, stopped.
Let me.
Belle said. He looked at her.
You sure?
She nodded.
This time we do it right.
With tweezers and gentle hands, she unearthed the bloom, roots and all, preserved, alive, unbroken. She passed it to him. He took it in both hands like it was made of breath. A soft sigh escaped him as the glow pulsed in his palms, sinking to something deep beneath his skin.
It's bonding,
he whispered. Belle watched the light spread up his arms in thin, vein-like strands. Not painful, calming. Kade looked at her, less creature, more man than she'd seen him yet.
This changes everything,
he said, and it did. But not just the curse, not just his control. It changed them. The space between them had narrowed. And neither of them wanted it back. Chapter 5. Bound by Blood and Bloom. The bloom didn't just soothe him, it quieted something inside him. Belle hadn't seen calm before. His hands stopped shaking, his jaw unclenched. The gold in his eyes softened, retreated, as if the wolf within him had stepped back to listen. They didn't speak much on the ride back, not because there was nothing to say, but because too much had already been said in silence. His palm still held the faint light of the bloom. He kept glancing at it like he wasn't sure it was real. Belle pulled into her building's alley, killed the engine, and looked over at him.
You okay?
Kade nodded.
I think I'm more me than I've been in weeks.
Belle didn't smile, but her voice was warmer.
Good, because we're not done yet.
He followed her upstairs again. This time, he walked without stumbling. She made soup, not because it was special, but because it was what she had. Kade sat at her tiny table, fingers resting gently on the jar, now holding the flour in water and soil. Every so often he would glance up at her, not suspicious, just watching.
You know I can't stay forever,
he said after a while. Belle stirred the pot.
I know.
But I don't want to leave until I understand what this is.
She looked over her shoulder.
The flower?
Number you.
The silence after that was thicker than before, but not uncomfortable. Charged. She served the soup and sat across from him. They ate. Nothing fancy, just two people trying to fill a void they hadn't admitted they had. After, Belle sat on the couch, legs tucked. Under her, flipping through her field journal. Kade lingered near the window, staring out at the city as if it were a forest full of unknowns.
When you shift,
she asked finally,
do you remember anything?
He didn't turn around.
Flashes, smells, emotions. But it's like watching someone else control my body through fog.
And with the bloom?
I remember everything, every step, every breath. I'm still me.
Belle closed the journal.
Then we need to find more. Not just for you. For anyone else like you.
Kade finally turned to face her.
There aren't many of us left. Most gave in. Some don't want help.
Doesn't mean they don't need it.
He nodded.
You don't back off, do you?
Not when I care.
Those words made something shift in his expression, something vulnerable, unguarded. The way he looked at her was no longer just appreciation, it was recognition. The slow, startling realization that someone saw the worst in him and stayed anyway.
You scare me,
he said, barely above a whisper. Belle stood, closing the distance between them. Why?
Because I don't know what I'd become without you now.
She stood so close he could see the flecks of green in her eyes, the faint smudge of soil on her cheek from digging. She didn't move to touch him, just stood still, present.
You're not mine to fix, Kade.
She said quietly.
But if you let me, I'll help you fight.
And with that, the space between them didn't just narrow, it disappeared. Chapter 6. The line we crossed that night. Sleep didn't come easily for either of them. Kade lay on the pull-out couch, shirtless, a thin blanket tossed over his legs. The bloom rested beside him in its jar on the windowsill, glowing faintly, steady like a heartbeat. Belle had given him space, but her presence filled the apartment. It was in the scent of the tea she drank late, in the hum of her laptop keys from the other room, in the softness of her footsteps on creaky wood floors. He could feel her, and he wasn't used to that, feeling safe because someone was close. Around 2 a.m., Belle padded out of her bedroom in flannel shorts and a hoodie. She didn't say anything, just saw him awake and crossed to the window beside him.
Still glowing,
She said, eyes on the flower.
Barely.
He replied.
I think it responds to you. Your body chemistry. You're the anchor.
Kade shifted to sit up straighter, careful not to seem too alert.
Or maybe you are.
She turned to him.
What do you mean?
The bloom responded when you held it, not when I touched it. Not until you handed it to me. There's something about you.
Belle furrowed her brow.
You think it's me?
I don't know,
Kade said.
but I've never shifted slower, never come back clearer, not even when I had 3 of those flowers in bloom at once.
Belle was quiet for a moment. Then she said,
Maybe it's not just the flower. Maybe it's trust, presence, memory.
You think emotion can control a transformation?
I think emotion controls everything. Kade,
let the silence settle before asking.
If I lost the bloom tomorrow, would you stay anyway?
yes,
She said without hesitation. She didn't add qualifiers. She didn't stumble over it. Just yes. Something in his chest twisted. That ache again. The one he thought was gone. Not pain. Longing. The next day, Belle called in sick. She needed time, and not just for research. She needed to figure out what this was becoming and what it already was. Kade helped clean the apartment, barely saying a word. She watched him out of the corner of her eye, how he moved, how he listened, how his senses sharpened even in stillness. He was a man, but there was a storm inside him. Not just a curse, not just claws and fangs, but history, regret. Isolation so deep it lived under his skin. She wanted to understand it all.
where were you before the city?
She asked while they ate lunch on the balcony. Kade picked at his sandwich.
A ghost town in Montana. Before that, southern Germany. Always rural. Always somewhere to disappear.
And now?
Now I don't want to disappear anymore.
Belle met his gaze, and it rooted her. She felt like she was falling, but not in fear. Falling into something solid. He looked away.
I don't want to make you a part of this.
You already did.
That evening, just before sunset, they went back to the rail yard. Kade could sense something changing. The bloom in the jar at Belle's apartment was wilting, fading again. Whatever it was feeding from, emotion, energy, proximity, was slipping. But they needed more. Belle found 3 more possible locations in her maps. A dried lake bed in the valley, a city rooftop garden, and a patch of land behind an abandoned factory that had once processed iron. They went to the rooftop first, as the sun bled orange across the skyline. Belle climbed a maintenance ladder to the top of an old school-turned community center. It had been shut down for years. The rooftop was wild. Broken cement, rogue plants, old satellite dishes. Then she saw it. 3 faint glows under a slab of concrete. Kade, he was up the ladder in seconds. She pointed.
There.
Together they knelt, cleared the debris, and unearthed the 3 small blooms, all glowing, all alive. And then something shifted. Kade's back arched. His breath caught. He gripped the rail of the roof hard enough to bend metal.
Too close to the edge.
He said through clenched teeth.
I feel the shift coming. Fast.
Belle grabbed the flowers, cupped them against his chest, pressing them to his skin. The glow surged. Kade gasped, the light pulsing through him in a wave. His body jolted, then steadied, eyes wide, heart thudding. He looked at her, trembling.
That's not just biology.
No,
She agreed.
it's connection.
He wrapped his arms around her and held her there, tight, desperate, real, not because he needed her to survive, but because he wanted her to stay. And she did. Chapter 7. The Wolf and the Wall. Kade didn't let go of her right away. They stood on the rooftop under a bruised purple sky. Belle's arms around his waist. His heart beat a slow echo against her temple. The glow of the 3 blooms pulsed between them like a third presence. Living, aware, warm. For the first time since the shift began haunting his blood, Kade wasn't afraid of what was inside him. He wasn't fighting it. He was balancing it. Back at Belle's apartment, the 3 new blooms sat in separate mason jars on her kitchen counter. The glow was steady, but unpredictable, stronger when Kade was near, dimmer when he drifted to the other room. Belle took notes obsessively, trying to track the patterns. Soil type, water levels, light exposure, emotional variables. Kade watched her from the couch, hands laced behind his head.
You know,
He said.
most people would have run screaming when they saw what I was.
Belle didn't look up.
You're not a monster. You're a system out of alignment.
He huffed.
That's the most academic way anyone's ever described me.
She smiled. Kade stood and crossed to her. He looked over her shoulder at her notes, then said softly.
You're wasting time.
Belle turned to him. What do you mean?
You're tracking blooms, roots, metrics, but that's not what saved me.
She blinked.
Then what was?
You.
They didn't kiss, not yet. But the air between them shifted in the way that things do when something unspoken is finally acknowledged. Instead of touching, they sat side by side, arms close, legs nearly brushing. Kade spoke first.
I used to believe the curse would kill me, that the wolf would take over one night, and I'd never come back, that maybe I deserved that.
Belle turned her head. Why? His jaw clenched.
Because I've hurt people.
How many?
He hesitated.
3 that I know of, during blackouts. None of them died. But they didn't walk away the same.
Were they strangers?
One was a friend, someone I cared about.
Belle stayed quiet, letting him speak on his own terms.
She tried to help,
He said.
tried to love the beast out of me. But she didn't know what she was doing. She got too close. I warned her. What
Happened to her.
She left, after I woke up with her blood on my hands.
Belle's heart twisted, but she didn't move away. Instead, she asked.
What's the difference now?
Kade looked at her, eyes shadowed but steady.
You don't try to fix me, you see me.
Belle nodded once.
I'm not here to change you. I'm here to remind you who you are.
That night, the shift tried again. It came quieter this time. No roaring pulse, no bone-snapping tremors, just a quiet unraveling. Kade woke around 1 a.m., drenched in sweat. He sat up, gasping, chest tight, arms shaking. Belle was already there, the jar with the bloom in her hands, glowing bright as fire. She sat beside him on the edge of the pull-out couch and offered the jar. Kade touched the glass. The light leapt into him like a silent electric tide. His shoulders dropped. His body stilled. He exhaled. Belle watched him carefully. "You're holding it together," she said. "Because you're here," he whispered. He leaned forward, forehead resting lightly against hers. Not a kiss, just closeness. "I don't know what this is," he said. "It's the beginning," she replied. He smiled. For once, not out of pain. And when they slept, it was side by side. Not as a protector and a danger, but as two people learning, finally, what it meant to be known and not run. Chapter 8. Thresholds. Morning came slowly, golden light stretching across Belle's apartment floor like fingers trying to wake the world gently. Outside, traffic hummed. Inside, it was still. Kade woke first. His senses were quiet. No clawing heat, no static rising beneath his skin. The wolf was still there, always, but distant, resting. He turned his head and saw Belle curled beside him, one hand loosely tangled in the blanket they'd shared. Her breathing was slow, steady, peaceful. It had been years since he'd known a moment like this. He slid off the couch quietly, stretched the stiffness from his back, and stepped into the kitchen. The 3 blooms on the counter still glowed, soft but stable. He poured water into their jars, the way Belle had shown him, treated them like they mattered, because they did. When Belle appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes and yawning, he looked up and said, "I didn't shift last night." She smiled. "You're welcome." Later that morning, she took him to campus. It wasn't part of the plan. She didn't usually bring anyone into her academic world, especially not werewolf shapeshifters with raw histories and eyes that glowed under stress. But they were running out of test space. The biology building had a basement lab she could use when no one was around. She waved her badge at the door, led him down the back stairwell, and unlocked a steel-reinforced closet at the far end of the corridor. Inside, the air was stale, but there was room, counters, sealed storage units, a mini greenhouse box under red lights. "This is where I run the real tests," she said, flipping on the overheads. Kade looked around surprised. "You trust me here. I've seen what you look like when you don't have control. I'd rather you be near a fire extinguisher and some backup sedatives than pacing in my living room," he smirked. Romantic. Belle grabbed her kit and sat beside him at the counter. "We're going to test the blooms," she said. "See if their light intensity matches your heart rate. That might help us predict when you need another." He nodded. "Makes sense." She clipped a pulse monitor to his finger and opened the jar. The bloom pulsed brighter immediately. Kade's pulse ticked up by 1. Belle smiled. "You two really do have a bond." He watched her as she wrote the numbers down. She didn't rush, didn't panic, just worked with calm precision, like she wanted to understand, not to fix, but to learn. "Why do you care so much?" he asked suddenly. Belle paused, looked up. "Because somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing this as your curse and started seeing it as ours." Kade's throat tightened. "And," she added more quietly, "because you make me feel less alone in my own skin." They didn't say more. They didn't need to. That night, back at her place, Belle sat on the windowsill while Kade rested on the couch. Shirt off, arm bandaged from a test draw. His body healed faster than she could record. His veins lit faintly from the inside when the bloom was near. "I feel something changing,"
he said.
Belle glanced over. "In you. In us."
She said
Nothing for a moment. Then, "It scares you." "Yes. Me too." He sat up, turned to face her fully. "But I want it anyway." Belle climbed down from the window and walked toward him. She stopped just short, inches away. And this time, she didn't hesitate. She kissed him. It wasn't perfect or polished. It wasn't the climax of a fairy tale. It was real, raw. A press of mouths that said, "I see you and I choose you anyway." When they pulled apart, Kade's voice was barely a breath. "I didn't know I could feel this human again." Belle touched his jaw softly. "You never stopped being human. You just needed someone who wouldn't run." They didn't say anything more that night, because they'd crossed the threshold. And now, there was no turning back. Chapter 9. The Pull of the Moon. The wolf didn't speak in words. It never had. It whispered in instincts, in pulses under the skin, in hunger and urgency. And lately, that whisper had grown louder again. Even with the blooms, even with Belle. Kade stood in the center of Belle's apartment, motionless, jaw clenched, eyes locked on the window as the sun dipped behind the skyline. He'd felt it the moment the light changed. The shift in the atmosphere, the ache in his spine, the static in his chest. It was like something in the world was calling for him to break. Belle noticed it too. She always did. She set her mug down on the table and turned toward him without a word. She didn't ask if he was okay. She knew he wasn't. She just walked over, soft-footed, and stood beside him. "Full moon's not for another 3 days," she said. "Doesn't matter," he replied. "The wolf doesn't care about the calendar." Belle didn't speak for a moment. Then, "Come with me." He turned toward her, brow furrowed. "Where?" She didn't explain. She just grabbed her jacket, picked up the pack of emergency supplies they kept by the door, flowers, first aid, protein bars, adrenaline shots, and tossed it to him. Kade caught it and followed her out. They drove into the hills, headlights slicing through the night. Belle kept her eyes on the road, one hand tight on the wheel. Kade sat with the window down, letting the wind hit his face, trying to slow the rise of heat under his skin. It wasn't panic. It wasn't pain. It was anticipation. That scared him more. "Are you sure about this?" he asked after a long silence. Belle's jaw tensed. "I'm sure I don't want to watch you burn from the inside again in a studio apartment." He didn't argue. Eventually, they reached the same Firewatch cabin they'd used the first night, the one where he'd nearly broken the walls, trying to keep himself in. This time, they came prepared. Belle unloaded the gear, insulated blankets, the strongest of the 3 surviving blooms, portable monitors, a sedative, just in case. She set everything up without rushing, moving like someone used to pressure. Kade stood at the edge of the clearing, eyes on the sky. The moon was just a sliver tonight. Thin and sharp, but still it pulled at him. "How do you do it?" he asked without turning. Belle glanced up from her setup. "Do what?" "Stand this close to something dangerous and not flinch." She zipped the last of the emergency bag and walked over to him. "Because you're not a threat to me." "You're wrong." Belle reached for his hand. "Then prove me wrong." Kade didn't take it right away, but eventually he did. Inside the cabin, the air was cold, the wood walls holding the chill. Kade sat on the floor against the back wall, the bloom resting in a jar just inches from his knee. Belle sat across from him with her notebook in her lap and a pulse monitor clipped to his finger. "Baseline is low," she murmured. Kade gave a hollow laugh. "Give it 10 minutes." They waited. Outside, the forest whispered. Inside, his breath grew heavier. His skin glistened with sweat. The glow of the bloom flickered as if reacting to him. Belle noted the changes. Rate of breath, eye dilation, micro tremors in his hands. Then the pain began. It always came slowly, tightness in his chest, then behind his eyes, then up his neck and into his jaw. His shoulders twitched. His hands curled into fists. Kade bit down on a grunt and tilted his head back against the wall. "I can feel my bones humming," he said through clenched teeth. Belle stood, walked to him, knelt beside him. "I'm here." His eyes were starting to glow now, amber burning into gold. The shift was close, and so was he. Kade turned his head toward her, his jaw locked, expression strained. "You should leave." "I'm not leaving." "Belle, I know what I'm doing." His whole body jerked once. The light from the bloom surged. Kade let out a low, pained groan and doubled over. Belle braced his shoulders, grounding him. "You're not alone," she said. "Don't fight me, just stay with me." He shook his head, breath ragged. "I don't want you to see me like this." "I've seen you," she said fiercely. "This doesn't scare me." And then it broke. His muscles seized, his back arched. The air seemed to crackle with heat as the wolf inside him surged forward like a tide. His fingernails blackened, his teeth lengthened, and his breath came in growls. Belle didn't run. She stayed on her knees, steady, hands at his sides, voice low and firm. "Kade, listen to me. You're still in there. Don't let it take you." His eyes locked on hers, wild, luminous, unhuman, but not lost. Not this time. The wolf in him writhed, clawed, snarled, but it didn't win. Not all the way. 36 minutes later, he collapsed into her arms, half-shifted, still breathing, still conscious. Belle lowered him gently to the floor, checked his pulse, fast but even. His skin was slick with sweat, his breath shallow, but his eyes, now dimmer, still watched her. "You stayed," he murmured. She brushed hair from his damp forehead. "Of course I did." "I didn't lose myself." "No," she said. "You held on." He smiled, cracked and small. "Because of you." Later, they lay side by side on the floor. The bloom glowed softly beside them, not strong, not fading, just alive. Belle stared at the ceiling. Kade reached for her hand. She let him take it. "I used to think love would be impossible for me," he said, "that no one could survive it." Belle turned her head, met his gaze. "I'm not here to survive you," she said. "I'm here to know you." He blinked slowly, overwhelmed but steady. "And if I lose it again?" "Then I'll be here to bring you back." A silence settled. Not heavy, not sharp, just true. He kissed the back of her hand. Then he whispered, "You're the only bloom I ever needed." The last bloom. The flowers didn't last forever. By the third week, 2 of the remaining blooms had dimmed completely. The third still glowed, but inconsistently, and only when Kade was calm. Belle had done everything she could. Adjusted light exposure, tweaked the soil composition, introduced mineral supplements. Nothing worked. The flowers weren't just reacting to biology. They were responding to him, to his state of mind, to his soul. And something in him was changing again. Not unraveling, not losing control, but evolving. They sat on the roof of Belle's apartment that night, the city humming around them, The last bloom rested in its glass jar between them. It flickered, then flared, then dimmed, like a heartbeat slowly finding its rhythm. Belle leaned against Kade's side, her hair brushing his jaw. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders and pulled her closer. She didn't resist. They'd stopped pretending there was a line between survival and love. It had blurred days ago. "What if the flower dies?" Belle asked softly, eyes on the skyline. Kade exhaled through his nose. "Then I learned to live without it." "You really believe that?" He nodded. "I didn't used to, but I think the bloom wasn't the cure, just a reminder." "Of what?" He turned to her, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "That I still had something to come back for." Belle smiled, sad but certain. "Then you don't need the flower anymore." "No," he said quietly. "I just need you." The final shift. It happened the next night, not during a full moon, not triggered by fear or pain, just natural. Kade woke with heat beneath his skin, but no panic. He stood slowly, walked to the mirror, and watched as his eyes shifted gold. The glow wasn't violent now, it was calm, like a fire under glass. Belle stirred behind him. "It's happening," he nodded. She sat up in bed, hair tangled from sleep, voice low and steady. "You're not fighting it." "I don't think I need to." They didn't rush. Belle pulled on a hoodie and followed him down the fire escape, across the alley and into the trees beyond the apartment complex. The forest here was small, just a strip of green between roads, but tonight it felt like sanctuary. Kade stood in the clearing. The moon was barely visible. He looked at her. "If I don't come back, you will," she said. He smiled. "Then let me go." He stepped forward, and the shift began. This time it wasn't violence, it wasn't pain, it was release. His muscles stretched, lengthened, changed. Fur rippled down his arms, his face elongated into a muzzle, fangs pushing through gums. But it wasn't grotesque. It was graceful, controlled. By the end of it, he stood tall, a hybrid form. Not fully wolf, not fully man, but fully Kade. He looked down at his hands, clawed but steady. He took a breath and looked at her. Belle stepped closer. No fear in her face, only awe. "You're beautiful," she said. Kade tilted his head. "You're biased." "You're finally whole." He stepped forward, lowered his head, rested his brow, fur and all, against her chest. She held him, hands sliding into the thick fur behind his neck, grounding him. She felt his heart. He felt hers. 2 rhythms, 1 bond. The return. By dawn, he shifted back. No pain, no screaming, no broken bones. Just a man standing barefoot in the clearing with tears in his eyes. Belle handed him a hoodie and a bottle of water. "Still you?" He smiled, wide and warm, more than ever. They walked back to the apartment hand in hand. The last bloom, still sitting in the windowsill, flared as he passed, and then dimmed for the final time. They didn't need it anymore. It had done its job. 1 year later, the cabin in the woods was theirs now. They'd rebuilt it from the foundation up. Belle had turned one half into a research lab, solar-powered, climate-controlled, filled with preserved samples and wild specimens. Kade had the other half, a place to run, a place to shift when he needed, a place to belong. They still kept the last bloom in a sealed case, dried and perfectly preserved. Not because they needed it, but because it reminded them how far they'd come. Kade taught himself to transform at will. With time, with patience, with Belle beside him, he could now walk between worlds, shift when needed, return without losing anything. He wasn't a beast anymore. He was a man with a gift. And Belle? She became known for her field work. The Nolan theory, they called it. A controversial paper about emotional resonance in genetically bound flora. But only a handful of people knew the truth. The paper wasn't just theory. It was survival. It was love. It was Kade. They still had bad nights. Shadows didn't just vanish, but they faced them together. Not as savior and monster, not as doctor and patient, but as equals. They stood in the doorway of the cabin, arms wrapped around each other, watching the moon rise. Kade leaned down, lips brushing her temple. "You know," he murmured, "this is still a cursed love story." Belle smiled. "No." She looked up at him, eyes fierce and full. "This is a love story that broke the curse," and together they stepped into the dark. Unafraid, whole. Home. Epilogue. The wild beyond the seasons changed slowly in the mountains. Snow came late that year, blanketing the pine ridges in soft silence. The air smelled of wood smoke and frozen bark. Belle stood at the edge of the clearing behind their rebuilt cabin, camera in hand, fingers numb. She hadn't been trying to photograph anything in particular, just the light, the way it cut through the branches like a blade, gold and cold all at once. Kade had gone running early that morning, not away, not from her, just running, free, in full wolf form. It was something he did now when the pressure in his blood built too high to ignore. No bloom, no sedation, just a run through the woods, and always, always, he came back. She turned as the familiar sound of padded footsteps broke the quiet. A large figure emerged from the trees, silver-gray fur, alert golden eyes, snow clinging to his legs. Kade shifted mid-step, slow and practiced, body folding inward, fur retreating like breath against frost. In seconds, the man she loved stood before her, barefoot, shirtless, flushed with cold and life. Belle grinned. "How was it?" He walked to her, pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I raced a hawk. Lost. Not bad for a guy with no wings." He pulled the flannel from her shoulders and wrapped it around himself. "Come inside before your fingers freeze." They walked back to the cabin together, leaving only one set of footprints in the snow. Kade's had already vanished. Inside, the fire was low but steady. The space they'd built together was full of signs of life. Books stacked in corners, half-filled journals, dried flowers hanging from twine over the windows, a well-used tea kettle humming on the stove. Belle poured them both mugs of black tea, dropped in fresh rosemary, and passed one to Kade. She paused beside the mantel, eyes drifting to the preserved bloom on the shelf. Its petals were brittle now, pale gray, but still intact. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. Kade looked up from his tea. "The flower," she nodded. He shrugged. "Number it helped when I needed it. But I'd rather feel everything than numb the parts I used to hate." Belle took that in. Then, "I've been thinking about going back. To the city," she shook her head. "To the valley, where I found the first bloom." Kade leaned forward, interest sparking. "You think something's changed?" "Maybe. I just have this feeling that the land there still has secrets. And now I know what to look for." He nodded slowly. "You want me to come?" "Only if you want to." "You know I do." They drove out 2 days later, truck packed with supplies, gear, and a sleeping bag they rarely used because neither of them slept far from the other anymore. The valley looked different this time, emptier somehow. The tree line had receded, and erosion had torn at the hillside. Belle frowned as she stepped out of the truck. "Climate stress," she muttered. The roots won't last much longer. Kade stood beside her, arms crossed. Then we get what we can now. They split up. Kade on scent, Belle with her drone camera and thermal filters. Hours passed. The sun began to lower. The old soil was harder now, resistant. Belle had nearly given up when she spotted it. Near the edge of a collapsed stone wall. A single glow beneath frost-covered leaves. Her heart jumped. Kade, he appeared at her side seconds later. Together they uncovered the new bloom. Slightly different from the last. Its glow softer, its petals longer. This one feels quieter, he said. Belle nodded. They evolve. She reached into her pack for her sampling kit, but paused. Kade tilted his head. What's wrong? I don't want to pull it. You're the one who taught me not to fear them. I'm not afraid. She met his eyes. I think this one belongs here. He looked down at the flower, thought for a moment, then smiled. Let's protect it instead. They built a low wooden perimeter around the area, staked out the perimeter with biodegradable markers. Belle mapped it with satellite overlays, linked it to a protected species file under her research name. The bloom stayed. So did the piece. They didn't need to harvest it. They just needed to know it was possible. 6 months later, Belle stood at a podium at a science conference in San Francisco, projecting slides of bioluminescent flora and psychological resonance patterns. Her paper, Botanical Bonding Under Genetic Pressure, had sparked both fascination and skepticism, but she didn't care, because sitting in the third row, dressed in something almost normal, was Kade. Smirking, supportive, still the only person in the room who knew the entire truth. After the applause faded, he met her outside with his hand already outstretched. You killed it, he said. She took his hand. I didn't say half of what I wanted to. You didn't need to. He leaned in, kissed her temple. You said everything that mattered. That night, back in their hotel room, Belle rested her head against his chest and listened to his heartbeat. I think people will figure it out someday, she said. What you are. They'll have questions, he agreed. Maybe one day we'll tell them. He brushed his fingers down her back. Or maybe we let the world keep guessing. Let the story become what it wants to be. She smiled into his collarbone. Fairy tale? No. He tipped her chin up to meet his eyes. True story, just a little wilder than most. Roots. That run deep years passed. Seasons turned like pages. The world changed, but some things didn't. The cabin stayed. The blooms, those rare, strange, impossible flowers, began to reappear. Not just in one place, but across landscapes where no one expected them. Belle catalogued every one. And Kade? He taught himself how to shift under starlight, how to run through open meadows without fear, how to hold her without worrying that he'd ever let go. One night, under a wide open sky, with fireflies blinking across the tree line and the scent of pine all around them, he knelt, not because he needed her to fix him, but because he wanted her by his side. Belle Nolan, he said, voice rough with nerves and love, you've seen every version of me. And you stayed, so let me stay with you, for every version of you. Belle's eyes shimmered, and without hesitation she whispered, yes. Final words, beauty, still. This wasn't the kind of story where the curse was broken by a kiss. This was the story where love wasn't the cure. It was the choice, over and over, through blood and bloom, through fear and fire, through teeth and tenderness. This was their story, wild, true, and still growing. The end.